Welcome to the Department of Toxic Substances Control webinar on Ascon landfill site. Our focus today will be on Pitf cleanup, a brief update on the Ascon landfill site project since June 2019. I want to thank you for taking the time today to join us, especially during these challenging times. We sincerely wish you and your family are well and keeping safe. And this webinar today will actually be scheduled from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and Maya Akula and I will be facilitating today's webinar. Slide 2, please. You are in a view and listen only role. Today we will be taking questions through the Q&A feature. So please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen to send your questions. You may send your questions or comments at any point throughout the webinar. We request that you only send one question at a time so that everyone get their questions answered adequately. And we will respond to the questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please note that we will not be taking questions through the chat function. And for those joining by phone, we ask that you hold your questions until we ask you to unmute. However, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 to let us know you have a question. Lastly, please know that we're hosting this webinar from different locations, and we request that you bear with us if there's any lag time or longer pauses. We sincerely appreciate your patience, understanding, and cooperation in making this a successful webinar. So now I'd like to welcome Maya Akula, Public Participation Supervisor, to go over our agenda today.
Thank you, Jessica. My name is Maya Akula. I'm the Public Participation Supervisor at Dtsc. We appreciate you joining us this evening. Here is an overview of what we will present today. Who we are, what we do. Next, we will provide the site overview, which includes the timeline, milestone, and current status. As Jessica mentioned earlier, our focus today is on Pitf cleanup, its investigation, background, Pitf activity schedule, Pitf excavation work, air treatment, grout plant for slurry trenching excavation, air monitoring. Next, what you may hear or see during the Pitf work, health and safety of the community and the workers, and finally, how you may participate and also the contact information. Following the presentation, the Dtsc team will respond to your questions, comments during the Q&A session. Slide 4, please. Now I will introduce you to the Dtsc team who are working on this project. Grant Cope, Deputy Director, Cleanup Program. Ed Moreland, Branch Chief, Cleanup Program. Safu Syed, Project Manager. Amit Pathak, Senior Engineer. Donald Greenlee, our toxicologist. Gama Ortiz, Public Information Officer. Jessica Anderson, Public Participation Specialist. And I'm Maya Akula, Public Participation Supervisor. In addition to our Dtsc project team, we have the technical advisor, Andrew Sherin, as well as Tom Herbel and Travis Hopkins from the City of Huntington Beach attending this webinar. Now I invite our first presenter, Grant Cope, Deputy Director, Cleanup Program, to start our presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Maya. If you could advance the slide, please. I want to begin tonight by just thanking everybody for their time that you're taking this evening to be with us. You probably had a really long day, and it's nearing the end of a really long week. And the fact that you could do any number of things, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here, walk through the presentations, but most importantly, engage with us Tell us your thoughts, ask us questions. We will endeavor to answer to the best of our abilities. This is the most important part of what we do before we're actually doing the work. It's talking with you guys about the importance of the work and your thoughts and questions. Let me go over just a little bit about DTSC. DTSC's cleanup program's mission is very straightforward. Our mission is to protect people across the state of California from harmful chemicals by cleaning up contaminated sites. We've been doing this for quite some time. We've cleaned up thousands of sites all across the state, such that at this point, roughly 1 in 3 people in California live about a mile away from a site that we've worked on at some point. And so who's doing all that work? The people who actually, I'm the deputy director, I don't really run it. It's the people who are on the ground that really do all the work. We've got more than 300 dedicated scientists, engineers, toxicologists, geologists, multidisciplinary staff. They do all the work, and they chose to use their professional skills and abilities to work in communities to protect people. Ascon is one example. It's a very important example. We know that we have a long way to go at the site, and it's our commitment to you to walk with you and bring you along with us, be transparent in what we're thinking about and what we want to do. And then most importantly, to talk to you about it and get your feedback. So with that, I will hand it off to Ed. Ed?
Great, thank you very much, Grant. If we could advance to slide 6, please. And I'd just like to reiterate what Grant has said. Thank you so much for joining us this evening at 6 for a couple of your very important hours. We very much appreciate that. Once again, Ed Moreland, branch chief for the Cypress Cleanup Branch in the DTSC Cypress office. What I'd like to do tonight is start off by just giving you a background, for one, on the overall Ascon site itself, and then talk a little bit about more Pitf, and that will be presented in more detail by some of my colleagues after I speak. So to begin with, Ascon property, as I'm sure almost all of you know, is a pretty substantial property, 38 acres, and it's located at the southwest corner of Hamilton and Magnolia Street in Huntington Beach. The landfill started back in the 1930s, and if you think about it, it makes sense that what kind of waste it received initially on. The time was such that it was the boom days of the petroleum industry in Southern California, and Huntington Beach, as we've all seen the pictures, where it's wall-to-wall oil derricks like a forest. So this really was a destination for some of the waste materials that ended up from that drilling process, from the drilling process itself. A lot of it is drilling muds, for instance, a lot of liquids involved in that, as well as other waste materials. Later on at the landfill itself, it switched over to really being a landfill that dealt with petroleum waste to one that dealt with construction waste. And it was not only construction waste itself, it was also industrial waste. And that's why we're here tonight, is really to focus on that period, because when it was receiving industrial waste is during the time frame when the Pitf contamination was disposed of at that site. So that's important to us here. Just a bit of trivia. The Ascon name, as you probably may wonder what that's about. Asphalt and concrete. So that's where it inherited its name when it was receiving construction waste material, concrete and asphalt. After 1972, the site received only construction waste, though. So that's kind of a mark in kind of the calendar for the site. Now you see here timelines. We've got a series of environmental timelines, if you will, in terms of when activities were really moving along at the site. In some cases, sometimes there were some lag times. You look into the first couple of these bullet items, in the early 2000s, and that's when the feasibility study was being developed for the site. And a feasibility study is simply, you want to evaluate the options that are appropriate for selection of remediation at the site. Typically 4 or 5 options would be considered at that point in time. So that's when those are laid out on the table and for public review. And at that point, subsequent to that, decisions made on the actual remedy to be selected at the site. Then in kind of the mid to late 2000s, all the way to 2011, some interim actions took place at that site. And the interim actions, what I mean is some actual site cleanup took place to at least take care of a part of the cleanup itself, or to remedy an emergency situation that happened at the site. And this emergency action that they're talking at the site back in the mid 2000s had to do with failure of some of the materials at the site, meaning a slope failure of some of the materials of the site that needed to be cleaned up. So that's what took place 2005, 2006. And interim removal measures also took place during that same time frame. And one key component of those interim measures was to remove the liquids from the numerous ponds that were at that spot, to be able to at least take care of those liquids first. Then in 2015, kind of that time frame, the site really started to dig down in terms of what was going to be done at the site specifically. Once that was determined, the environmental documentation, the CEQA process got put in place for that site, and the remedial action plan, which is the actual selection of that one plan, of that one remedy, actually did happen at that point in time. So after the remedy itself is selected, then the work goes in terms of actually putting the details of how that's going to be done, where the actual engineering to be able to figure out what's going to be designed for the site. And Dtsc worked with the Ascon folks and ended up approving that remedial design in 2017. Based on that, then it was preparation to actually do the work itself. And that work began in January of 2019. And based on that remedial design, about a few months into the work, there started to be more and more complaints from the community with regard to odors and dusts and things like that. And it came to a point in the May and June timeframe of 2019, and Dtsc held a meeting at that point with AQMD and the community, and really received all of the very intense comments that occurred because of generating of those odors and that waste, to the point where in June, effectively immediately after that meeting, Dtsc shut down the project, and with the intention of kind of resetting it and finding methods to be able to deal with these odor and dust issues. Slide number 7, please. So what I'd like to share with you now is some of the things that happened at the site since that site shutdown occurred in June of 2019. Some of these items were actually mandated by Dtsc and AQMD, Air Quality Management District, in order to be able to create a list that needed to be done before any cleanup action could be resumed at that site. And you can see some of these. A key one, because of the odors and the dust, were a comprehensive monitoring program where there was continual monitoring of the air surrounding the site, but also in terms of placing monitoring stations within the community itself, both to the east of the property in the neighborhoods, at a school, as well as to the north in the Edison Park, as well as in the neighborhood located to the northwest. So extensive air monitoring was put in place at that time. At the time frame, just about a little over a year ago at this point in time, many of you will note that the topography, there was a big berm on the northern part of the site bordering Hamilton Avenue. It stood about 20 feet above the elevation of the adjacent roadway. And it was found that that berm was starting to develop cracks in it. And that really raised the alarms and kind of our concerns as me as a person, as a geologist, but that these cracks could continue to grow and you could end up with a failure of that slope into Hamilton Avenue that could release a significant amount of odors besides just doing the physical damage or threat to safety of ending up in Hamilton Avenue. So an approach was taken to be able to remedy that solution, to remove that portion of the site in a kind of really surgical manner, to be able to make sure it wasn't going to be going on and not going to be an ongoing hazard before the actual full remediation was in place. That did take place just about a year ago at this point in time, and successfully removed about 1,000 cubic yards of soil that were impacted by waste materials from the landfill. And that was done in a very controlled manner based on DTSC's directive to Ascon, such that the odors at the site ended up not to be of great significance or much really at all. Once also there were odor control suppressants placed on the material. So that should be placed in the win column is the way we feel about it. During the same time frame, starting in 2019 all the way through the beginning of this year, a fence was placed along both Magnolia Street and along Hamilton. And that was greatly extended in terms of height from what it originally had been, from a normal chain link fence up to a height of 16 feet at which it now exists. And not only was a fencing material put in place, but there's a fabric put on top of it to be able to control dust and hopefully divert and control odors too. And very important to the effort we're going to talk about today, it also controls sound and diverts sound. In effect, this fabric that was put in place are indeed sound blankets. So that's going to help control sound from the effort that's about to happen. Other aspects are enhanced community outreach. The Ascon team developed a website and sends out regular project updates, a weekly basis, and via direct email. So that has been enhanced. Part of the agreement when the site was shut down was that the Ascon responsible parties would fund a third-party technical advisor. And it's just like Maya had mentioned tonight. I believe Andrew Shireen is on the call tonight. Andrew is a professional geologist and a very knowledgeable person. And he is paid for, his services are paid for through the Ascon responsible party, but he does not report to either to Ascon or DTSC. He reports to the city of Huntington Beach. So he's in effect an ombudsman to be able to answer questions and act as a liaison between the community and the other agencies and the responsible parties. So that's a great addition. A key thing that came out of the Northwest berm mitigation that I previously talked about was for the Ascon responsible party to really investigate and dig down into what's causing the odors at the site specifically. They knew very well what was causing it in general, the petroleum type materials that I spoke about earlier, but they really went out and supported to figure out individually what those chemicals were so they could address suppressing the odors associated with those chemicals in a very specific fashion. So that effort started with the Ascon berm mitigation work in the middle of last year, and has really formally been going on since the beginning of this year. And they've actually been out there for several months collecting odors or samples from around the site where the soil still has yet to be excavated for the final remediation of the site. So many borings, several dozen borings were were advanced in that location and soil samples collected. And they're in the process of analyzing that information right now. And the outcome, the intent of that outcome is to figure out what those chemicals are and how best to treat them. And we expect that to come out for our review sometime probably in the July timeframe. And lastly, OnSolve, which is an Ascon alert system that has just recently been initiated for the site, has been in place, which will provide residents with information on things like upcoming events and so forth, but also in near real time, it'll provide information in terms of any odors that one might smell or something like that. And it will take a shot at least explaining those to the public and notifying the public of those. So with that, I am going to pass the microphone over to Safu Syed.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. My name is Safu Syed. I am the project manager for the Ascon Landfill site. I want to talk about the Pitf investigation. Since 2004, several investigations has occurred at the Pitf site or the Pitf part of the site. These include the following. In September 2004, we have Pitf data package for pilot study number 3, which contains index of all analytical report from samples collected at or near Pitf. Also, in January 2005, we have Pitf off-site investigation addendum. And this addendum letter report, which contains results of off-site soil and soil gas assessment under Magnolia Street near Pitf, and surface flux from on-site soil along the perimeter near the Pitf. Also, in June 2007, we have the groundwater remedial investigation revision 1, Appendix K, supplementary groundwater investigation in the Pitf area report. And this report contained the result of hydropunch groundwater sampling and boring logging near Pitf. And in September 2010, the Pitf odor and emission pilot test and groundwater sludge testing technical memorandum was developed. And one additional document in January 2017, we have the Pitf 2016, it was dated 2016, sampling technical memorandum, which document the chemical characterization of Pitf waste profile. And it contains the analytical result and board logs from the future perimeter road area to screen for impact that could potentially be encountered during remedy excavation. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. Now I want to talk about the Pitf background. Briefly, as you see in the picture, we have the white tent. The Pitf is the area covered by a large white tent near the southeast corner of the site. And it includes waste generated from the production of styrene and other volatile organic compound, VOCs, and semi-volatile organic compound, SVOCs. The proposal will include excavation of the Pitf waste material in an area of 45 feet wide by 45 feet long by 30 feet deep. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so this chart shows the activity schedule. As you see from that chart, the preparation and mobilization was completed at the site. Also, the final plan, which include the Pitf procedure and contingency plan, and the Pitf emergency response plan, and the health and safety plan, were also completed and approved by Dtsc. At this point, the public notification and community outreach is being conducted, and this online meeting right now it is part of it. So the next step is to start the tent preparation and to conduct the system test. And we anticipate to start the field work in June and to be completed at the end or sometime in August of the summer. Okay, I would like to turn over to Amit, please.
Thank you, Safu.
Thank you.
My name is Amit Pathak. I'm engineer with the Dtsc. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about the excavation, air treatment system, and air monitoring. Right now, this slide just shows the outline of the work being planned. Currently, the Pitf is being set up and pre-start testing is ongoing. Excavation material will be transported and disposed of at the landfill, Buttonwillow in Central California. Next slide, please. Pitf excavation work. This slide summarizes what's going to happen inside the tent. Important thing to remember here is that the tent will be under negative pressure or the vacuum, so that any potential air contaminants that might be generated during the excavation process will be captured and treated. As you can see, the excavated material will be loaded on the bin within the tent, and the bin will be completely sealed off before it comes out of the tent. Once it comes out of the tent, it will be directly loaded to the haul truck and transported off-site. Again, things to remember, everything will happen within the tent that will be under negative pressure or vacuum. Slide number 13, please. So what is Pitf air treatment? As you can see here, the setup with the air treatment systems are with the two trains of the system. You can see the green are carbon adsorption vessels, the blue are the blowers. And on the east side of the tent, you can see the air intake vents. Before the work begins, the tent will be started under negative pressure with the blower. As the work begins, if there is any potential air contaminants or the odor, that will be captured with this air treatment system. The fresh air will flow from this air intake vents and will be captured with the carbon adsorption vessels and treated. Again, if there is any contaminants, air contaminants, or any odorous compound, that will be captured and treated. The thing to remember is that the air treatment system will be ongoing 24/7, even outside the work hours. So it's really important to note here that the system will be on until the Pitf excavation work is completely done. Slide number 14, please. So how the excavation will be complete or done? Excavation will be done by slurry trenching method. It's a method where narrow, deep trench will be constructed to remove the waste material. As the waste material is removed from the trench, the grout plant will pump the slurry that is made of bentonite and cement mixture. As the waste material come out being loaded on the bin, the grout slurry will fill the volume of the trench material. Again, at the same time, the air treatment system will be on to capture any odorous or volatile organic compounds. The slurry trench method also helps to stabilize the wall of the trench. It also helps preventing the groundwater from coming up and also help minimize the odorous emissions from the Pitf during the work. Slide number 15, please. Even though we don't expect any air to escape from the tent, as tent will be under negative pressure, there will be extensive air monitoring being planned. As you can see, the monitoring stations are all along the perimeter, north and east side of the property, and within the site around Pitf. The air monitoring technician will move around every hour to collect the readings from these locations for volatile organic compounds, the dust, and odor. Also being planned is near real-time air monitoring data that will be posted on Ascon website within a couple of hours. So again, we don't expect any air to escape the tent. However, extensive air monitoring is being planned. Slide number 16, please. What you may see, this typical excavation project, you will see the seal beams, the long reach excavator that will be inside the tent, and the waste haul trucks. Slide number 17, please. So as I mentioned, the noise level is going to be in compliance with the Huntington Beach noise ordinance. The way the blowers and the air treatment systems is being positioned, which is west side of the tent, and then the 16-feet barrier fence helps reduce the noise level. If there is any potential need of noise abatement or noise barrier, it can be easily installed if required. Again, we don't expect at this point that the noise level will meet the city's ordinance criteria. And again, the Pitf tent and the barrier fence work as a noise reduction barriers. Slide number 18, please. So it's really important to note that the workers who are going to work inside the tent are highly experienced in work environment like this. They have worked in this kind of situation. They will be equipped with specialized personal protective equipment that includes the respirators that will be with the supplied air. Again, the nearby workers and the community members are not at the risk. The work will be conducted in a very slow start fashion. Once it starts, it will be very slow, and then it will pause and check. So that will be checks and balances with a slow start to make sure no odor is being generated, no dust is being generated, and then work will begin. With that, I will turn it over to Maya Akula. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. So I will let you know where you can find the project information. You can find the Ascon project information on the Pitf explainer on the Dtsc EnviroStore database at https://bit.ly/3dcctuh, and also on DTSC's Ascon webpage. You may also find this information on asconhb.com. If you have any questions or comments, you may also call the Ascon Community Information Line at 714-388-1825. The Ascon project information is also available at our DTSC Cyprus Regional Office, and the address is 5796 Corporate Avenue, Cyprus, California, 90630. Please call 714-484-5337 for an appointment to review the documents. Slide number 20, please. On behalf of DTSC, we want to thank our community members for joining us this evening, for your continued interest in this project, your emails, calls, and staying engaged during this process. Please send your questions, comments to DTSC Project Manager, Safu Sayed. Safu's email address is saf.oyuh@dtsc.ca.gov. If you have any questions or comments, you can also reach out to Jessica Anderson, Public Participation Specialist. Jessica's email address is jessa.anderson@dtsc.ca.gov. For media queries, you may email Gamma Ortiz at gamal.ortiz@dtsc.ca.gov. That ends our presentation, but before we get into the Q&A session, I would like to take a moment to thank Chris Trinidad, who is helping us in the background. And now Jessica will help us with the Q&A session.
Thank you, Maya. Next slide, please. Slide 21. Thank you. Okay, so we're now at the question and answer session of the meeting. If you have any questions or comments, please click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar. We will respond to questions in the order we receive them and will not be using the chat function. We ask that you only type one question at a time so everyone has the opportunity to get their question answered. If you're joining by phone, I ask again that you hold your questions until we call on you to unmute. You can raise your hand by pressing *9 to let us know you have a question. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so we have our first question. It says, regarding the Ascon alert, please mail all local residents regarding Ascon alert. Also, it can be very confusing. So can you please arrange public tent events at the park, etc., where residents can come and receive help signing up? Thank you.
I'll go ahead and pick that up first. This is really a public participation issue, so I'm going to put this over to Maya Akula or Jessica to respond to this question.
Thank you, Ed. We will take this question to the Ascon public participation folks, and we'll get back to you on that one. I see Sharon's name, so Sharon will get back to you.
Okay, so Sharon also has another comment that says, again, we have 4 numbers to contact in case of emergency during the excavation. According to Terrence Mann, AQMD reports fell through the cracks between the various numbers. We have 1 number, or at the most 2, being the AQMD for reporting concerns, How many phone calls does it take for help to arrive during the off hours and otherwise?
Great question, Sharon. Thanks for that. I'll start off by saying, yeah, there are a bunch of numbers there, and I hear what you're saying in terms of it could be confusing. There is some purpose behind that, though, in terms of really putting out there to the community different types of information or different areas where they can obtain that information. So there is value in having multiple numbers, but I think perhaps it involves some clarification from our standpoint. And that's with regard to what kind of the purpose of each of those numbers is and when you would call them. So I'm gonna talk, well, I get the response from our public participation folks, but I think it's a really good ask to be able to have us subsequently come out and get out to the community kind of explanation of what those four numbers are about. But in terms of boiling things down, as you suggest, it really comes down to there are two agencies involved in the oversight of this work here too. We as DTSC as well as AQMD. So I think at a minimum, those should be the top numbers. From DTSC standpoint, Safu Syed, who's on this call, will be our primary point of contact. Either Syed himself or one of our DTSC staff will be on the site at all times during this effort here. So we will provide that number so we can have a source to be able to pick up your calls right away. Would you like to add anything else, Jessica or Maya?
Yeah, I can give my DTSC cell phone number in case you cannot reach out to Safu Syed. And my cell phone number is 714-715-4881. And this is Maya Akula.
Maya. Okay, so the next question says, where are the removed materials from Pitf taken?
I will
Great
take
question.
that. Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and pass that over to Safu, I believe is Safu, yes. Or Amit. I'll have you answer that question, please.
This is Safu. The material from the Pitf will be taken to the Central California at the landfill called the Button Willow. And this is where the location that this will be taken to. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Safu. Next question says, I have no questions. I just wanted to thank you for a clear and readily understandable presentation. So thank you for that comment, Bert. The next question after that says, what is the schedule for the entire Ascon site to be fully cleared, closed, and require no further action?
I'll pick up on that right away. That is a great question, and we want it sooner than later. There's still some issues that have yet to be resolved, though. And the biggest one of these is how to control the odors at the site. The best way to do that for the remainder of the soils that need to be excavated in the most feasible manner that can be done. That is what's under evaluation right now as part of that odor assessment. And once the odor assessment is done, then the Ascon responsible parties are to get back to us, DTSC and AQMD, and come up with us about a odor-specific plan, a site-specific plan, perhaps broken down into strategies for different parts of the site based on kind of the topography of the site and the nature of chemicals that they find as part of that odor assessment. So it's a big, it depends in quotation marks there, depending on the nature of the approach that's taken to clean it up. Some ways are a lot faster than others, but other ways are definitely more conservative in terms of controlling the odors. So at this point in time, we could say it's going to be from a small number of years, at least another couple of years to probably less than 5, but it's still the time frame is pretty large at this point in time. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, so the next question says, what is the slurry replacement?
Okay, we were getting some of the details regarding the actual excavation at Pitf. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Amit Pathak. Please, Amit.
Thank you, Ed. This is Amit Pathak, Dtsc. So the slurry replacement is basically to make sure that the trench that you're excavating, the walls are not collapsing. And for that, the slurry is being pumped in. The slurry is made of bentonite and cement mixture mainly.
Submit. I'm going to go to the next question, also from the same person. It says, how large is the plume underneath the site?
I'm
I
going to
believe
pass.
it's
Okay, Amit, if you're good with responding to that, please do. If not, we'll defer that to Safu.
Please have Safu respond to this question. Thanks, Ed.
Okay, so I assume we're talking about the plume of the groundwater plume. Based on the investigation and of the groundwater since 2007 report until last summer, there's no indication of any chemical above the level of site. So all the groundwater contamination are within the Ascon landfill site. Thank you.
Thank you, Safu. Next question says, what backup power is provided for the filtration suppression system?
I'm going to point this back to Amit regarding the system itself.
That's a very good question. And the answer is yes. There will be a backup power generator that will be standby in case of any need for continuation of the air treatment system. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. It also asks, will employees be off-site when on breaks?
Correct. So there will be employees on the rotational basis where first batch of workers will go in and that they will be replaced by the fresh batch of workers. And this is all built into the operation of the Pitf work.
I'll go ahead and add to that a bit here. We've had discussions with the Ascon responsible party. The site is pretty substantial. They do have trailers, multiple trailers up at their kind of site offices area. And it's my understanding that they're going to be taking their breaks on site up in that administration area.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, it looks like this might be our last question, unless there's any others. It says, are there any other pits that need to be excavated, and what will the next steps for landscaping, visual improvements such as wall removal to better improve the look of the community when completed?
I'll go ahead and pick that one up. Clearly, that's the bottom line for this site here is what's the community going to end up with after the remediation itself is done. But to address the issue about pits being excavated, like I mentioned earlier, you know, the fluids, all the liquid lagoons were drained at the site more than a decade ago. So that was a big deal in terms of removal of material off site. The Pitf work is unique to the site. The Pitf, because it contains contamination that's really very focused within that area. And it contains, you know, it's often called the styrene pit because it was the material that's there. So pretty unique. So because of that, and because of some of the nature of that material as actually being California hazardous waste, that's what needs to go off site. The remainder of the areas, it's anticipated that really are you know, it's a landfill, of course, so there's going to be some variety of things found ultimately. But most of that material will be relocated onto the site to be able to such that the vapors will be collected by a system, and then the contours of the land will be kind of smoothed out. At that point in time, a cap of material will be placed on top of that. And that is a very complicated capping material. It involves both man-made fabrics that keep the material, the odors and stuff in place or collected, as well as it prevents really erosion from happening. That is the liner itself. This cap will sit on the entire site and will be in a smooth, laid down in a smooth fashion. On top of that is where the landscaping will go next in terms of native type vegetation across that site. And as Bill, you've noticed, or you've mentioned, the fence will be replaced at that point in time. Once the cap has been installed, once the construction activities are done, and a much more aesthetically pleasing fence will be put into place at that point in time. Timing that will happen after completion of construction. Just those tall walls up, those 16-foot high fences up in place to reduce sound, odors, dust, and so forth. So those will be up until the end of the remediation process.
Great, thank you so much, Ed. Okay, so phone caller ending in 708. Can you go ahead and press *6 to unmute yourself, please? Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering, it seems like you guys are doing everything possible to create a safe environment and get this completed. My question is, what could we do as a community to help streamline this process?
Boy, that's an excellent question. I mean, just by your attendance in meetings like this, and to be able to have the full extent of what's going to happen at the site is huge. I'd say pass the word on to your neighbors at that point in time. Pass the word that there is information available in various sources, that is from the Ascon website itself to Dtsc's website. We have a tremendous database of pretty much all the activities that have happened at this site over the last few decades. So feel free to access that, but pass the word, please pass the word. I'd say have them contact some of the people that were listed in this email so they can get ongoing messages regarding the nature of the work. So, and you know, if you see something, have them say, hey, there's something that I just don't understand, or it's just not making sense to me. At that point in time, call us. Please call us at Dtsc, and we'd be more than happy to answer the questions for the community.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, so I'd like to call on phone caller ending in 798 to go ahead and do *6 to unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. I just want to thank you for being here for our community and giving us the information that the community needs to be aware of. My question is, you know, we have a lot of high schoolers, a lot of children attending high school and teachers, and I just want to make sure that you will be in contact on a regular basis with the teachers, with the school board, and making sure that parents are aware, because we all, you know, have our children, a lot of us have our kids there. We have a huge community and lots of families know each other. And so we can all, like the caller before me just said, just if we can be a community working with you, making sure that everyone is informed and being as careful as we possibly can, because of course we don't want our young children, our animals, and our community or anybody breathing in toxic air if somehow any of the, you know, toxic air was in the area. So I know a lot of kids, a lot of teenagers are out hanging out at the park and they play sports. So we just want to make sure that we're aware with everything that's going on. And we really appreciate it if you will be always open and readily available to give us the information that we need to protect our community and our beautiful children. You know, really appreciate it. And our teachers. Thank you.
You know, that is just a wonderful comment. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, that has also been kind of brought to light over since the issues came to light in 2019. And since then, the school districts, the Edison High School superintendent, as well as representatives of Edison High School, have been involved in pretty much our monthly discussions since that point in time. So they're very much engaged in that process, as well as the other schools within the area. So we have multiple representatives take place at our regular meetings regarding the site and what's going to be happening at the site. On top of that, additionally, when something is happening at the site or about to happen, or we need to just do an update, then the updates are also provided to the schools itself, especially Edison High School, like you say, right nearby. So materials are specifically provided, but that's also to, you know, all the schools I just mentioned are provided with those notifications. So great question and very important concern.
Thank you, caller, and thank you, Ed. So I'd like to invite, since we have some extra time, I'd like to invite anyone else by phone to press *9 if you'd like to ask a question, or go ahead and click Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type in any additional questions. In the meantime, Chris, if you can go back a slide so we can get the contact information for everyone in case they need to write it down. So once again, I'll go ahead and announce the email addresses. So if you'd like to contact the project manager, Safu Syed, you can reach him by email at safu.syed@dtsc.ca.gov, and that's spelled SAFOUH.SAYED@dtsc.ca.gov. You can also reach me if you have any questions at jessica.anderson@dtsc.ca.gov, and that's spelled JESSICANDERSON@dtsc.ca.gov. And once again, media queries can be sent to our public information officer, Gama Ortiz, at dtsc.ca.gov. In addition, I'd like to repeat Maya Akula's public participation supervisor's phone number. It's 714-715-4881. So it looks like there is no further questions. So this actually concludes our Q&A session as well as our webinar for today. You can submit any additional questions within 24 hours to our project manager, Safu Syed. So we'd like to thank you all on behalf of DTSC for your interest and participation today, especially during these unprecedented times. So we'd like to thank you again and stay safe.